If you've been using the same kitchen knife for years, you've probably noticed something we all quietly accept but rarely talk about. At the beginning, everything feels easy. The blade moves through vegetables, meat, and everyday ingredients like it was made for nothing else. There's a certain satisfaction in that smooth cut that makes cooking feel lighter and faster. But after years of use, that feeling slowly disappears. The knife starts to lose its edge without you even realizing it. Instead of slicing cleanly, it begins to drag through food. You press harder, you adjust your angle, you try again, but the result is still the same. Sometimes it even slips a little, which makes simple cutting work feel more tiring than it should be. Over time, you start to accept it as normal, even though it really isn't. A dull knife doesn't just affect your speed in the kitchen, it changes the whole cooking experience. What used to feel smooth and enjoyable slowly turns into something a bit frustrating and heavy. The truth is, this happens very gradually. Day by day, cut by cut, the blade wears down until one day you suddenly realize it's no longer the same tool you once trusted completely. If you're also dealing with a kitchen knife in the same condition as mine, don't worry, because I already have this idea. The first step is to build a simple knife sharpening tool using just one bolt and two nuts. What makes this design interesting is how practical and clever it actually is. By tightening the two nuts against each other, a small adjustable gap is created, and this gap naturally becomes a fixed sharpening angle for the knife blade. That angle is important, because it helps guide the knife consistently instead of letting your hand decide everything, which is often the reason blades become uneven or damaged over time. Another advantage is the metal construction itself. Since the bolt and nuts are made of hard metal, they provide a stable and durable contact surface. This helps create enough friction during sharpening to gradually restore the edge of the blade. Unlike softer materials that wear out quickly or lose shape, metal keeps its form, meaning the sharpening angle stays consistent even after repeated use. To make this tool truly effective, it needs to be mounted onto the head of a drill. By taking advantage of the drill's rotation, the sharpening process becomes much more consistent and efficient. Instead of relying on manual movement, the spinning motion ensures steady contact between the blade and the metal surface, helping the edge recover faster and more evenly. Instead of having to hold the rotation button continuously, I will use a simple automatic rotation switch, making the knife sharpening process much easier and more comfortable to operate. Before turning on the machine for real sharpening, let's stay calm and not rush. It's better to do a few practice runs first to get familiar with the motion. Try practicing the movement of drawing the knife from the heel of the blade to the tip, so when you start sharpening for real, you won't make mistakes or lose control during the process. A small tip for everyone is to apply toothpaste directly onto the blade before sharpening. Toothpaste acts as a mild abrasive, helping to lightly polish the metal surface as you work. This makes it easier to start the sharpening process, especially when the blade is very dull. It also helps remove small surface imperfections on the edge, allowing the knife to regain a smoother and more consistent cutting surface during the first passes. It might look like we're done at this point, but actually we're not there yet. Even though the sharpening tool we made earlier works very effectively, it's only the first stage, the initial fine sharpening step. A proper kitchen knife doesn't stop at just one level of sharpening. It actually goes through multiple stages to build up a clean, stable, and durable cutting edge. For example, with sharpening stones like the ones here, we use a 1000 grit stone and a 3000 grit stone. We start from the lower grit and gradually move up. The idea is to progressively refine the edge instead of trying to finish everything in one step. While doing this, we also try to keep the sharpening angle between the blade and the stone as low as possible, because a lower and more controlled angle helps create a sharper and more efficient cutting edge in the final result. Since you're watching from a screen, you probably won't be able to fully feel the dramatic improvement the way I can here in real life. This blade is now extremely sharp. It honestly feels like if you just let a single strand of hair fall freely onto the edge, it would cut immediately on contact. But to clearly prove how effective the sharpening result is, I'm going to do two simple tests: cutting paper and slicing a tomato. Let's go through them together and really observe the difference. As everyone has seen, the cut is really smooth to the point where I almost don't need to apply any force at all. The blade moves in a very controlled and confident way, gliding through the surface from the very first contact without any hesitation or dragging. What you can notice is how stable the motion feels throughout the entire stroke. There's no sudden resistance, no uneven pull, just a continuous and clean movement that stays consistent from start to finish. This kind of result doesn't happen by accident. It comes from building the edge step by step, making sure each sharpening stage is done properly and with enough attention to detail. When everything is aligned correctly, the blade doesn't just cut, it responds instantly. It feels like the edge is doing most of the work on its own, while the hand is simply guiding the direction. And that's really the most satisfying part. Because when a blade reaches this level of sharpness, every motion becomes lighter, more precise, and more predictable. You don't have to fight against it anymore. Instead, it feels like the tool and the hand are finally working in complete harmony, creating a cutting action that is both clean and effortless every single time.